Welcome to the online foresight training at the European Foresight Platform, Module 1b, different types of future-oriented and systemic policy support. In the previous module, we have identified 3 desirable characteristics of future-oriented policy support, which apply to foresight. In this module, we will compare foresight to other future-oriented policy support activities, such as impact assessment, technology assessment, forecasting and technology forecasting, and strategic planning. Let's start with impact assessment and technology assessment. Impact assessment prepares evidence for political decision makers on the advantages and disadvantages of possible policy options. It is conducted to ensure that policy initiatives and legislation are prepared on the basis of transparent, comprehensive, and balanced evidence. It is used to justify a certain policy option. Technology assessment examines the social, economic, ethical, and other consequences of introducing new or existing technologies into society. It originates from public policy decision-making in the US. It is often multidisciplinary and participatory, but does not typically involve exploration of possible new technologies and alternative future scenarios. Let's move on to technology forecasting and forecasting. The latter aims at predicting developments on the basis of extrapolation of perceptible trends. Alternative futures may be processed, but only in order to define the most likely future. Forecasting is an extrapolation of historical data, and therefore it is limited by data availability and quality. Technology forecasting aims to predict future technological capabilities, attributes, and parameters. It does not try to predict how things will be done. A technological capability or attribute can be forecasted to be available at some time in the future, although society may not necessarily want it or need it. Finally, strategic planning is a systematic process through which an organization agrees on priorities that are essential to its mission and builds commitment among key stakeholders. Strategic planning guides the acquisition and allocation of resources to achieve these priorities. It works effectively in many contexts, especially when the focus is on shorter-term topics. It tends to take objectives and aims of eventual activities as givens, as the ends for which we are seeking to define the most effective means. It does not per se involve stakeholders or diverging opinions. Typical methods used are SWOT analysis, scenarios, and technology roadmaps. Strategic planning is by definition a normative approach. In this table, we can compare these different approaches. In the columns, we will analyze each of the 5 approaches that we know. In the rows, we will look at whether they take into account alternative futures, stakeholder engagement, and whether they're action-oriented. Let's start with impact assessment. Impact assessment takes into account limited alternatives. Stakeholder consultation may be in place, however, only to complement experts' analysis. Impact assessment evaluates the consequences of specific policy options, and as such, it does not focus on mobilizing resources for implementation. It is not an action-oriented activity. Technology assessment does not look at alternative futures. However, it is a participatory method and includes stakeholders. It enhances our understanding and identifies key recommendations on a specific topic. However, per se, it is not an action-oriented activity. Forecasting sees the future as the evolution of the present. Because of that, disruptive and radical changes might be missed. Forecasting is based exclusively on expert work. Stakeholders are not engaged in the process. The output tends to be scientific or based on expert information There is no action or recommendation from forecasting. Finally, strategic planning leads to the identification of the path towards the desired future. As such, it does not look at alternatives. Again, it is mainly based on expert work and it seeks low commitment from stakeholders. It develops an action plan to obtain the specific objectives. As such, it supports action. Foresight, as we introduced in the previous model, takes into account alternative futures in that it builds a shared vision for the middle or long term. It is based on active stakeholder participation, which is crucial to its action orientation, as it seeks to develop commitment from stakeholders to implement decisions towards the future. Having looked at these different approaches, it is now interesting to understand the costs of not doing so. In this last slide, you can see some topical historical examples in which better futures literacy would have been of help. Enjoy the slide and enjoy the rest of the training.